And here we go. All right. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Guy Meyer. I have a little TV show here in out of San Anselmo, California, in lovely Marin County, and I have a special guest with me. I'm very happy to have Susan Kirsch, a local activist from our very same county, who has some uh, passion and mission that I think that both she and I kind of overlap on pretty strongly. Uh, Susan, I see you're an educator. I know that you ran for supervisor in the county of Marin a few years back and did not win, but I'm so proud of you for doing that. And it's an underdog position that we kind of many of us here feel like we have on the planet, but it's okay. So, and one other thing I just was mentioning to you, Earth Day was a holiday that I always feel is slightly underappreciated still on this planet. But you're going to tell me, you're going to open my eyes and other people's eyes about what's going on in terms of, I hope, a vibration of activity and restlessness among, well, never mind. I'm
Well, I
Susan,
can pick up there just to
Susan?
say,
Yeah,
I hope
tell
that
me about catalysts.
no, well, I mean, just to say, I hope what you're describing is that feeling of restlessness. I think it is really catching on
Yeah,
in a pretty big way,
yeah,
and linked to the title of your show, which I think is a great title, California Times, that, like, who's saying the times they are changing.
true.
And I think what we're witnessing is that there has been such a false narrative that has been promoted about housing, with kind of a Chicken Little theme of the sky is falling, the sky is falling, it's a crisis.
Hmm.
And using that refrain from a let's pretend storybook to convince so many people that it is worthwhile to undermine democratic principles of locally elected officials making decisions on behalf of the people who elected them. And that's being reneged upon and erased with this Chicken Little, the sky is falling narrative, so that all kinds of things are going on in California Times in this time,
Mhm.
which to me, the crisis is not the housing crisis. We have problems in affordable housing. Yes, totally agree with that. But the crisis is that what we're witnessing is the undermining of democracy and taking away those rights and access to dreams that people have about owning a home and a backyard and just home as a quality, and replacing that with, we'll have regional agencies and state mandates dictating what should be happening in our communities with little regard for what people want in their neighborhoods, because there's a whole lot more profit, a whole lot more profit to be made if the builders get the keys to our cities and to the decision making that we have been able to count on locally elected officials in conversation with local people to plan what's best for our cities.
Yeah, I think you're really exactly the theme. I think is sort of like, what is progress, and do the people. I think we've been on our heels as a community, as a culture, as a you know from going to the 1970s to here we are in 2020, which is sort of like my gamut of time. It feels like we've never quite found um, this empowerment of, we have the right, we have the power, we have, perhaps if we could share the vision of defining what kind of progress we really do want. But yeah,
Well, we had an example of that, I think,
yeah,
back in the days.
yeah,
Maybe we were working on this too, but back when people were really on fire about the environment
yeah,
and worked so hard to be able to bring into play something like the California Environmental Quality Act.
mm,
And that was a perspective that reflected values of so many people going, how we protect air and water and the life on the planet, that is worth fighting for.
yeah,
And so it's just shocking to me that we have legislators who are able to have, I think they've been persuaded by this false narrative, but that we have legislators who have decided it is quite all right to dismantle the environmental protections, saying that if we dismantle those protections, then we'll get affordable housing. Like, it makes no sense.
It's just sort of it's a dystopian, foolish future that we're trying to be told is almost like a fait accompli, that we're not supposed to question this future that they are sort of directing us on the path toward.
See, but Guy, their point of view is that this will pencil out for
yeah.
the developers, for the people who measure quality of life and success by the profits that they're making. I mean, often for their shareholders, which might be many of us who in stock market investments are, being told that REITs, real estate investment trust, that's the place to make a lot of money. Who, I remember a stockbroker telling me that was the place to put my money to have the highest rate of return. So in some ways, we're all somewhat complicit in the dilemma that we face and the culture that we're living in, which just puts profits and penciling out above those measurements of quality that can never quite be measured. But you know it when you're happy to see a neighbor who cares about, the barking dog or the potholes in the streets or all the things that bring us together as neighbors, which is lost if current legislation keeps barreling forward as if it'll solve the sky is falling crisis of affordable housing. I mean, affordable, what is it now? Like, what did I read just recently? I think it's like $98,000 or something qualifies you for low income.
It's horrendous. I saw that same thing too. It's like a complete, utter joke. I mean, I have poor people across, I live with apartment houses up and down the street, most of them built 40 years ago or whatever. And it's, to me, I could not pay that kind of rent that they buy. Well, we're getting off track. Come on, Guy. Let's get back into some of the details of these many laws that are kind of gradually come on the books. It's stunning to me how it's sort of like they kind of keep overlapping each other and keep coming. Can you give me a little picture of like what's going on today or what went on last year or 5 years ago that would brings up what we were talking about?
Yeah. I mean, how about, let's go back. I mean, this is further than you suggested, but just to give a picture of how long this has been going on.
Yeah.
Like I think it was 1972 that the term NIMBY was created as a disparaging term, as we know it is still held today, but it was coming up because it was in a Jack Kemp report that came out of HUD, the Housing Urban Development Department, because then too, developers were feeling the brakes put on as they wanted to build in contaminated areas that had been contaminated or areas that were known to be floodplains or doing things that were dangerous and not safe for the people who would have lived on what they developed. So in some ways, we are in what has been a long battle of protecting the people, in advance of the shiny sale signs going up saying, oh, whatever, will promote this, but not disclosing that the land is on a floodplain or in a fire safety zone or contaminated. I mean, we still have examples of that. But fast forward now, it seems to me that we are in a much more accelerated kind of time, partly accelerated when it should have been slowed down by the pandemic, should have been a pause, should have been a time for everybody to take a pause around housing especially. But instead, over the last 4 years, we've had nearly 70 different housing bills brought forward. And just to kind of frame it, I won't go with numbers, just partly because I won't remember all the numbers, but I can go with themes. That the themes that have been introduced over the past 5 or 6 years, often, unfortunately, by our Bay Area legislators, and can I name names on your show?
I'd be happy to. Yes, please do. Just go ahead.
I mean, so just to say, especially promoted by senators like Senator Scott Wiener, Nancy Skinner, Tony Atkins is from LA, so she's kind of coming in there too, and in the assembly, David Chu and Buffy Wicks, there is a team of people influenced, no doubt, I mean, and knowingly by our regional agencies like MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, and we're not being protected from the agency we thought might protect us, the Association of Bay Area Governments, ABAG, which is now kind of a disenfranchised lapdog of MTC, calling the shots for how to link transportation money to housing money. So we face a lot of bills that are threatening the environment, like we talked about, dismantling protections from CEQA. We have the housing crisis itself for the longest time was based on a number saying we had a shortage of 3.5 million housing units. I mean, eventually, work that was done at the Embarcadero Institute, a fabulous researcher, Gab Layton, who wrote the report saying it's not a 3.5 million, like that is, and she gave the evidence of how, like, it's still a big number, maybe I don't know what, it was still a pretty big number, but it was not the 3.5 that had been promoted over and over again, which Scott Wiener still uses sometime in saying that it's a crisis.
I believe that's the number that Gavin Newsom, when he was elected to office, was throwing out, that he wanted to create that number in his during his term of office.
Right. And then he backpedaled to say it was an aspirational goal, which so good for him to aspire big. But the cost of that false number is what is being used to push now what are called the regional housing need allocation, the RHNA numbers. So that's another one of the themes, bill after bill after bill, trying to create regional agencies with more power and have that enforced by state agencies like housing and community development with money to enforce, I mean, what some people are calling spying on the cities to catch them if they're not doing something, by the book in terms of approving housing measures. One of the bills, let's see, one of the bills, for example, that's coming forward this year is Assembly Bill 215 by David Chu, who is a big proponent of regional housing, regional planning, and regional power. And in this bill, if cities don't meet their RHNA quotas, which is another inflated and false number that they're throwing out there, if cities don't meet those numbers, this bill 2015 is proposing that cities could be fined up as much as $10,000 a month or $100,000 a month if they're bigger cities. And really, just to think, what's preposterous about all of this is cities don't build housing. Cities can permit, that's true. And if we go back to the early days, Jack Kemp, of course, cities have made mistakes. They're not doing local control perfectly, and they need some more tools and they need funding sources and some things like that. But if we go back to early days and think of how much time and effort went into convening community groups to have vision. What is the vision for our community? I think many of us with silver hair at least, remember sitting in on those groups, having a vision, and then doing zoning that would allow for different income types, different commercial uses, different recreational uses, like a whole bunch of different kinds of uses. And now with two bills that are being pushed heavily, Senate Bill 9 and 10, Senate Bill 9 by Senator Tony Atkins and 10 by Scott Wiener, like they would like to, and this is moving forward, they would like to dismantle single family zoning in every neighborhood, with the keys to the decision being in the hands of the developers, not in the hands of the city council. So go ahead.
No, I just want to make sure everybody understands when you say that, when she says eliminating single family zoning, you are creating for every lot now the right to have, and not only the right, but the push or the demand backed up by fines that you start dividing a single family home and now into either a duplex or put the units in the backyard. It's, I really wanted to understand this kind of element of how much was becoming more the stick, how once upon a time it was maybe a little more of a carrot that they were trying to drive you on. But now there really is this element with these allocations or required, the words sometimes don't seem as dramatic as maybe they actually really are in fact doing. It seems like they're taking away the discretion of communities. I've heard that term, oh, taking away the discretion. Well, that sounds rather mild, but they're taking away the fundamental authority of citizens to go down to their council and express themselves and want to have, their own community to fulfill the community's needs. I mean,
You're exactly right. And on the other side of discretion,
yeah.
I mean, because people would have history or know the uniqueness of their city.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side of discretion, what the state laws have been pushing is what they call objective standards.
Mm.
So like you can think objective standards, that would sound really good. But in translation, objective standards means a rubber stamp on the part of city staff. It means they need not notify your neighbors. I would guess they don't even need to put up story poles anymore. That it would be a rubber stamp based on what these new state law, one size fits all, top down for the whole state. I mean, again, California Times, I love the name of your program because, boy, California, we just have so much diversity. We've celebrated artistry and diversity and creativity and courage and compassion. And these bills, for the sake of developers making money, are squeezing everybody into little boxes, or at least for affordable housing.
Mm.
People making a killing on the stock market, they'll get luxury housing, which they could get anywhere. It reminds me, I pulled out just some of the things I've been reading lately. I want to call, viewers might be interested, especially in this book called, I don't know if you can see it, The Coming of Neo-Feudalism.
Wow.
Subtitle, A Warning to the Global Middle Class. So just to say, what we're witnessing is not just a problem here in Marin County or in our 9-county Bay Area or California. What Joel Kotkin, the author of this book, is documenting is the ways in which the people with the wealth, what we learned during the Occupy movement, the 1%, that small group of people is not satisfied with owning 1% of the wealth. They want still more. And so so Senate Bills 9 and 10, how this translates to me is that they are looking at our single family lots and homes and their notion of how could this be an asset that would generate greater cash flow. Like that's how they look at our property. So split the lot into two, a duplex on each side, a couple of ADUs going 3 or 4 story high, or if it's Scott Wiener with Senate Bill 10, building 10 units, like there's a lot of money in our single family neighborhoods. Many people are going, oh, it could never happen, in Mill Valley. Our city council would never let that happen. These laws that are passing through and have for the last couple of years, but every year they get more, the noose gets tighter around our neck, are going to soon have it be impossible. It'll be ministerial review. The developers have the keys to our community planning because there's a lot of money to be made, not just on the ground space where our houses sit, or we should say where our homes sit, because that quality of home is going to disappear and these will be housing units, rental most likely, and it'll be all the airspace up above the ground space.
Now, in distinction to what the narrative of these bills, Sacramento, this particular consciousness that for the most part, many Californians are they're not seeing, I think, the full dimension of that. It's taking away some fundamental liberties from us. But beneath the surface, California, and you're probably aware of this, since about 2000, starting about 2013 or 14, the birth rate in California, the population growth has really dramatically diminishing for a variety of reasons, no doubt. To the point where I think it was in 2016, we had the lowest birth rate since the Depression. And in 2018, we had the lowest birth rate since that history has been recorded in California. That was in 2018.
I don't know, again, might not work real well, but like, here's a chart
I
of how
just,
the population,
yeah,
how the
California
population,
annual population growth. And there's the last figure on the bottom of the chart is negative, which I was just found that out yesterday in preparing for this. And I'm stunned, but I'm in a way that I can't say that I'm saddened by that. Even though I don't wish for people who've been living in California for much of their lives to feel like they have to escape, which many do. But we have, since I became from the East Coast, came out here in the 1970s immigration wave, California has doubled its population pretty much. And the quality of life has not been improved by that. The other thing I was going to mention was the environmental impact of the construction. Now, I have heard the term 440,000 units in the Bay Area are supposed to be coming into line because of some bills. Is that ring a bell? Am I saying that correctly, or am I interpreting something wrong? It was an article in the IJ of just a month ago.
You're probably naming the number of RENA number allocation.
Right.
Units.
Yeah. And I think that number was also about the same for Los Angeles. You're talking about 1 million units. And I'm just, there's questions as to whether California, the people who take care of the climate goals, are really doing an accurate assessment of what's going on, because construction itself, according to Google, is 38% of climate greenhouse gas effects comes out of construction projects on the planet. And here, I'll show one here for you too. We're probably getting off track. This one is about state audit, state lags in tracking climate progress, an audit says. And in a quote, blistering report released Thursday, that concludes that the State Air Resources Board could hamper California's ability to meet its climate change goals unless the agency can accurately track the effects of its programs, let alone just the effects of what's actually going on. So I just feel like, we have a responsibility issue which goes back to local control. And I think we almost, the communities, if we were given the full control, we could become really more active warriors on behalf of the environment. Yes. Than what Sacramento or maybe even the federal government perceives its mission. I feel like a lot of stuff is waiting to emerge out of people understanding that we have the responsibility.
So, I'd like to just, put in a plug for the organization that I've created,
yes,
and many of us are getting to be a part of now, to do exactly what you're naming. The organization is called Catalysts. It's plural. There needs to be many of us acting as catalysts to a new vision that is kind of going back to, California times when it was inviting for everyone. I mean, I think the social equity, the diversity, that's all really important. And a part of that is that everyone should have the option, and there should be zoning that enables anybody to be working on acquiring home ownership, with that being the greatest way to build generational wealth. So Catalyst is intended to educate and engage and empower people to be working towards local control, correcting those things that have been weaknesses with local control, educating more people to be able to participate in it, and also educating people about the bills that are coming down the pike, and to be able to take action on these bills that are going to damage us. They're harmful bills that will damage whole communities, and without providing affordable housing. You know, the clamor of so many of our legislators to say, but we need affordable housing. The issues of, I mean, this is a whole nother conversation, but the issues of homelessness and housing ultimately go back to how much money are people able to make and to earn. And so the other issues are related to what's your cash flow coming in. That's related to what are the salary and wage requirements or the regulations that's happening around corporations or people who are hiring, issues of taxation and tax protection, and corporations paying their fair share instead of offloading their expenses to become a burden, an additional burden on the communities.
Susan, we're kind of approaching that point where we're running out of time, and I could see that 30 minutes was, and you could see too, we both knew that we'd be hard pressed to like put it all in a concise package, but I think it's been a great first conversation for you and I, and you have agreed to continue the conversation with me further, and I really look forward to it. I know you've been gathering a network. Really, there's a network that's building from Northern California to Southern California, and I'm sure into the Central Valley and everywhere, of people who are starting to connect. And I look forward to hearing much more about it. Once again, it's Community Catalyst or Catalyst. You tell me again.
www. Catalysts with an S. So think of yourself as lisping. Catalysts CA for California. Catalystca.org.
Okay.
Now, our website, it's under development, as websites often are, but check out our website. The website will be continually getting better, and we have a place for everybody at the table who wants to address this issue.
Susan, thank you. Awesome. And
Thank you.
We've got work to do. It's a lot going on, but I feel like your work is really. Within a few days of ending this interview, Susan and I came up with an idea to put together a 6-part series that we are calling Catalysts in California Times. We will be bringing you the voices of community leaders, elected officials, and ordinary California citizens who are committed to local control and the democracy that depends upon local control. Hope you join us next week when our guest will be Mike Griffiths, council member from Torrance, California. And we are going to continue to explore this issue of housing California in 2021. Thank you so much. Bye.